Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Is it just me, or wouldn't most people assume that a wheelchair user couldn't walk unless you found out otherwise? I can't comprehend this, LOL. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Not all wheelchair users can walk. So I'm at a theme park and I'm a full-time wheelchair user who cannot walk or stand. One of the rides is in a building and has an area outside the entrance for pushchairs and those strollers people bring to theme parks that pull all their stuff and older kids, etc., about to be left there as they aren't allowed in the building. My friend and I head to the entrance and this young employee comes to me and says, "You just leave your wheelchair there." I look at him and my friend's about to say something and I catch their eye and wink. I wheel over to the area and sit there with my brakes on. My friend cottons on and comes and stands next to me. The worker comes over and says, "You can go in now." Seeing me not moving, I reply, "How? You told me to put my wheelchair here." He, not seeing what's happening, replies, "Yes, so you need to leave it here and then go in and get it after." I ask him how that'll work, and he sort of blinks at me confused, then walks over to a guest who has asked for help. Another worker, older, who has like team leader or supervisor type phasing on his badge, comes over. The guy who has told me to sit there still talking to another guest, and the older worker comes over and asks if I'm okay. I explain that the guy had told me to sit here in my chair, and so I did, and then he told me to head into the ride, but leaving my chair here, and how I'm confused as I can't walk or stand. This worker is mortified and tells me this is obviously not the park rules, and how no one's to ask to leave their wheelchair there if they don't want to, and how I'm allowed in with my chair. The first worker comes over and the supervisor/team leader asks him what he's on about and how he can't tell wheelchair users to do this, etc. The younger guy said he was told to tell people they could leave their wheelchairs there, and we work out he has gotten his wires crossed, and that some people will ask if they can leave their wheelchairs there who are ambulatory and use them for when they get tired. And that's fine, but not to tell everyone in a wheelchair to leave their chairs there. The guy realizes his mistake and then realizes what I'd said about how I'm meant to go in means I can't stand or walk, and what he has implied, etc., and is mortified. Apologizing over and over, I explain how it's okay, and I'm glad he's realized what he said wasn't okay, but I can see how he'd gotten confused, and turns out he's very new. I head on to the ride, and as I exit, the supervisor comes over and refunds us our park entry tickets and has food and shop vouchers for myself and my friend. I explain how they didn't need to do this and how I'm just glad the new guy found out his misunderstanding with me, who found it funny and had a bit of a fun over someone else. Could have been me on a different day, who took offense and got angry, etc., which is why, I guess, I got the free stuff. And our second story. Need me to stay back and cover a shift? This'll cost you big time. This comes from about 15 plus years ago when I was, and still am, working with people with disabilities in a community home. It's a great job for those who like it, a terrible one for those who don't, meaning that any staff you meet are either very new or long-term like myself. As a consequence, the turnover rate of staff is high and replacement staff are slow to be hired, meaning you often find shifts not covered straight away. This is an industry where simply not having a shift filled isn't an option, particularly where I work in a house with a single-day staff and a single-night staff, each working 12 shifts on a 7-day spread over 2 weeks roster. There are some strict rules regarding hours you can work intended to avoid burnout, but more used to keep a rein over time, which in our industry paid 70% your hourly rate for the first 3 hours above your 76-hour fortnightly maximum, and 100% for any time after that. You can't demand overtime, but if they require you to work longer, they cannot pay you overtime. Also worth noting is that the people we work with are vulnerable, meaning they cannot be left unsupervised. Long story short, you can't go home until your replacement arrives. So back in the early 2000s, we were having problems locating staff, lots of people working overtime, and lots of fresh faces appearing and disappearing. The house I worked in wasn't difficult in particular for adults with intellectual disability, but there was no support, by which I mean the worker there had to fend for themselves. There was no supervisor in the next building. They were miles and miles away. I'd frequently at this time had to stay back half an hour waiting for staff to come replace me. I was less than happy with the way it was handled each time I called the office to tell them the night staff haven't arrived. Do you know who's booked? To which I'd get the reply, "We're still looking. How late can you stay?" The obvious answer was, "Until I'm replaced," but what I often said was, "I prefer not to stay after the end of my shift, but that doesn't seem to matter now, so I'll stay here until someone comes." Each time a new face arrived, I'd give them all the information they'd need for the shift, introduce them, walk them through their duties, etc. This would take 20 to 30 minutes. The point being is, I don't just jump ship when a staff arrives to replace me. This is someone's home, and I like them, so I'm not going to leave them in the hands of someone uninformed. Cut to that weekend. My roster had me working 12-hour days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Come Friday night, my replacement didn't arrive. I waited. I sent a text message to the supervisor after 15 minutes, then called after 30. Left a message, and when they eventually called back, I could tell they'd not found a replacement. I told them I'd stay until they did. This was by that time, an hour after I was meant to finish, 10 p.m. Come 11, they call and say they simply can't find a replacement. They offer a deal and say if I stay and do the night shift, I can take the next shift off. It's pretty even, so you won't miss out, they said. Then they changed their tone and said, "It's not really a request, we have no other option. Treat this as a direction." I reminded them it was a passive house, meaning you got half the hourly rate from midnight, but you could sleep in the bed provided, so I'd actually be taking a pay cut. They didn't know what else they could do, so I made a suggestion. I'd stay and do the night shift, but I wasn't going to give up my next shift. I was going to do that one as well. They agreed. It meant they didn't need to find a replacement for me in the morning, so they thought it was a good deal for them. It was, however, an even better deal for me. It took a few emails over the weekend with the union to sort out the particulars, but what happened was this. Once I couldn't leave my worksite because of a lack of replacement, I was on overtime. As this overtime was because of a direction, not voluntary, it remained in place until I went home. Because I didn't agree to drop my following day shift, my overtime continued until I ended on Saturday night. The upshot being that working 36 hours in a row resulted in the equivalent of 60 hours pay. I was the first person to, as they say, pull this stunt, and word got around that if you didn't get replaced, you were actually the person who was in a position of power. It didn't take long until the department put a little more effort into training and employing extra staff, so something like this never happened again. Not at least to me. Staying later to help people and to screw over your boss? Best story ever. And our last story. Someone split my property without my knowledge. I purchased my first home in April of 2021. The online listing advertised the home as a single-family home on 1 acre. However, the legal description on the listing described a 2-acre parcel, so we put in an offer and also asked the seller to clarify. The seller's realtor told my realtor that the home was originally on a 2-acre parcel, but the seller had split the lot before listing the home. I then proceeded to receive a VA appraisal, which came back for more than we had offered, and then we proceeded to move on with the sale. I never received any disclosures from the seller stating that he was in the process of splitting the land, and the land had actually not been split when I purchased. I have a copy of an affidavit from our closing documents that the seller signed stating that the property description at closing was correct and he had no knowledge of any splits happening to the land. I thought everything was fine with the sale until January 2022 when I was contacted by the titling company. The titling company stated that they pulled the wrong title during the sale and they needed me to quitclaim the other acre back to the seller. A few problems though. The appraisal that was done on the house included the second acre. I'd been paying taxes on the second acre for almost a year, and my mortgage encompassed the second acre. I told the titling agent I would absolutely not sign any paperwork without the authorization of my mortgage company. My mortgage paperwork clearly stated that if I quitclaimed any property over without their approval, they could take my home. My mortgage company performed their own title search and decided to not allow a partial land transfer. At the time, the property was not actually split. The seller and his realtor went to the county post the sale and got 2 new tax IDs on the property that I had purchased. The seller's realtor then came to me and told me that I would need to manually take the acreage off my mortgage. I wasn't actually sure what that meant, so I got my own lawyer involved, family friend. My lawyer basically referenced the purchasing agreement, which had the 2-acre description listed, plus all the other paperwork where I received no disclosure of a split. He also pulled another title report in September of 2022, which came back as no split had actually occurred. Because my mortgage company refused to do a land transfer, my lawyer friend told the seller's realtor they would need to sue me and my bank for the 1 acre. That was last September of 2022. I've not heard from the seller or his realtor since. I'm not sure if the seller was able to get compensation from the title agency insurance or his realtor's insurance or not. I have a copy of the land split application from the seller. It was approved 10 days before closing. There's a disclaimer on the form stating that if the county does not record the split within 6 months, the application is null and void. Fast forward to now. I'm trying to sell the home so I can move into a larger one, growing family. My realtor used a company to perform another title search, which came back that the parcel I purchased, the one on my deed, no longer exists. There are now 2 new parcels. The split would have happened without my knowledge over a year and a half after I purchased the property. I'm not sure if the seller or the county had the split completed. The county's BS&A website lists the seller as owning the parcel, and it lists me as the taxpayer. I went to an actual real estate attorney. They need to either pay back everything I paid for the 2nd acre, or they give up the right. The title company screwed up. I won't go into details, but I was returned an acre of territory. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.